just 'cause I love my podcast.
Working fans.
I shed blood for my podcast.
Ra-da-da.
Let a podcast holler where my podcast.
The pussy at.
All I want to hear is right here, my podcast.
Somebody say something about a podcast.
You won't take this from me, baby. You will not take this from me, baby.
Fans, welcome to the Working Fans Podcast presents, aka Slippery Joe's Funhouse, where we bring you a bonus podcast each week presenting your favorite podcasts' favorite stuff. Now, we have some Tape Trader's Guide to the 90s coming up. We have some Cult in Connecticut. We'll be bringing you some Peter X. Morosky and a variety of other things through year two. Fans, welcome back for another week. This week, our bonus episode is less something we're bringing to you that we enjoy, and it's actually a bonus review of this past weekend's Full Gear. And it is the rare tag team combo of AJ Strangebrew and myself. AJ, how you feeling today?
Feel great. Just got the good news that I'm going to be working basically 8 days in a row, so that's going to be fun.
Yeah, unfortunately, you said that means you're off of tomorrow's episode where we preview Talkin' Shop-A-Mania.
Yeah, the man they called Dave, I'm pretty sure took a lead pipe to my general manager so that he could get more face time.
Is that why he's not here right now? I mean, we set a pretty good recording time, and you're here, I'm here. Where's he?
Yeah, he says it's something to do with bread. I think he just has a yeast infection.
Oh man, you almost made me spit my drink out here, and I can't ruin a second computer. Now, this weekend, we both had the privilege of watching Full Gear 2020. And I want to start with the buy-in because it was Serena Deeb versus Allison Kay for the NWA Women's Championship. What did you think of this match going in? And then what did you think of it after it was all done?
I think the match was interesting because Allison Kay had been very vocal on Twitter and other accounts about how she couldn't get a shot at the NWA Women's title. And she gets let go and is done with her NWA contract. And the first thing she does is at AEW's Full Gear buy-in and get a shot at the NWA title. Definitely an interesting way to go.
And that's not even the most surprising thing that happened in this match. But a couple things that I noticed is that they've got the ladies' picture in the center plate for the title, like it's a high school locket or something. What did you think of that? Is that the way the title's always been?
I'll be honest with you, I don't think anybody alive remembers what the women's NWA title looked like. I think that you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody who remembers the original belt. I think it looks ridiculous. I think that it's actually somewhat sexist that they're playing up like women want a locket or something in the middle of their belt. It's definitely not appealing to me. I don't know how others feel about it, but I think it's a little on the sexist side. Yeah,
I mean, I guess it's different than a nameplate, but it just struck me as weird. And the only other thing that struck me as weird is during the match, when they were putting over Serena Deeb, they mentioned her background in yoga. And I thought that was a weird thing to bring up as a positive stat for her when Allison Kay competed in Bloodsport and is just a monster overall. Like, yoga versus this girl that can beat you MMA style, to me it didn't really match, but I thought the match was amazing.
Yeah, Allison Kay, here's this beast, and let's put over the fact that she's absolutely a dominant force. Oh, by the way, she's wrestling the yoga instructor.
Yeah, and in the end, Serena Deeb took it, which I was very surprised because when I saw Allison Kay was on this match, I was convinced Allison Kay was walking away the champion.
Here's the funny thing. Neither one of them are under contract to NWA. Serena Deeb is actually under contract to AEW.
Yes. And after the match, probably the biggest surprise, Thunder Rosa comes back out, so I guess she's not going to NXT. And is she going to challenge for this NWA title again? And where will that happen?
So here's the weird thing about the Thunder Rosa situation. This is what I don't get about it being on the pre-show. One of the biggest things people have been talking about in wrestling, quite frankly, is where Thunder Rosa is going. So you're going to take the time on a pre-show, which isn't guaranteed that people are going to see, and bring out what might be the hottest free agent in wrestling, and that's where you're going to show her. So I'm not sure that she's even locked in, to be honest with you. I think it might have been a one-time buy-off. I'm not sure that she's not going still to NXT.
That's possible. I think it was a good thing to put on the buy-in because it had the most... It has the most interest that it could pull from it. And to me, I guess that's what you'd want out there for free. I would think that would be more of a prime Dynamite angle. Dark at worst. This is the equivalent of Dark. So you would want it on Dynamite, I would say.
Yeah, to me, it's just not enough eyes on a situation that's a red-hot situation right now.
No, and these buy-ins, I don't know what the views they get are. Dave and I watched it on YouTube, but I haven't looked at like the view count to see where it fell compared to even where the pay-per-view sold.
Well, here's the funny thing about the buy-in. I didn't even watch it until after.
Okay.
I watched Full Gear and then watched the buy-in afterwards when I found out that it was Serena Deeb and Allison Kay. And because, quite frankly, I found out about Thunder Rosa being on it, that's when I went back and watched it.
Okay. Yeah, the buy-in, otherwise, it just featured a lot of video packages, and that's one thing that I think AEW does well, but I know you're not a fan of the hype packages, right, as much?
I fast forward.
Okay. Now, we'll get to the main card, because the first match was Hangman Page and Kenny Omega. And how'd you think this was as an opener?
It's definitely a way to get the show going hot. It was a hell of a match. These two beat the crap out of each other to a point where I think everybody was a little worried about the well-being of both of them.
Yes, their last match had actually taken place at New Japan's Wrestling Donataku 2018, I believe they said. And this definitely resembled that old-style Japanese match. Do you think it's to signal that the old Kenny Omega is back?
I think that's what everything's been about. Doing the sweeping for the sweeper, doing the attitude. Even on the Dynamite leading into this, when Hangman Page came out to save the Bucks, Omega came out, about 30 seconds after the ring was cleared to come out and help save the day?
Yeah.
It's definitely a different feel to Kenny Omega and much more of the Kenny Omega of old than it has been of the last 2 years.
Yeah, now this match had Don Callis on the call, which could have even maybe further been a tell. Is it a sign that they might be able to reach out and work talent-wise with Impact? Either way, I thought having him on the call helped a lot.
Yeah, even in the video package that I was fast-forwarding earlier in the evening, I saw that Don Callis was talking about Kenny Omega and talking about the differences and what he has seen. Now, we all know that Don Callis is not only called Impact, but it's called Kenny Omega in Japan, and they have the background in Canada together, being fellow Canadians. But
yeah, he's known him since he was 10. His uncle, the Golden Sheik, managed Don Callis.
Exactly. So how many people in the U.S. even know that the Golden Sheik is the uncle?
Only as many people as Omega tells. Like, you wouldn't have even known that Omega could have been drafted into the NHL at 16 unless Don Callis had told you that.
Yeah, and a lot of people forget what a phenomenal athlete Kenny Omega is, how well-rounded he is. He's one of those wrestlers that can bring both the strong style and the aerial style. And when he has matches like he did with Hangman Page where they beat the crap out of each other like that, that's the style of wrestling that I love.
Yeah, and this match was really competitive. Kenny Omega offered the handshake that Hangman Page didn't take him up on, and they were off to the races from there, just back and forth, hard hitting. They had some good high flying.
I think that the reason why Hangman Page, it's important for him not to take that handshake, is because this is the chance for Hangman Page to really come through and quite frankly, he's the one for the last few weeks who's been trying to put the team together, who's been upset because the team's not working, that he wants to make sure that they're friends, and he feels he's got to, at some point, not look like a total bitch.
Yeah, and this whole kind of interaction between the two will come back later in the show. Now, they made an announcement for tonight, Tuesday night, 6 p.m., AEW games on YouTube. What do you think this could be, or are you not even really concerned? Because I know you're not as much of a gamer as me. I don't believe, like you said, you were into Pong or Mario Kart, so you were a little behind there in games.
Well, remember, now not only do you have Kenny Omega there, who's big into games, but now you have Miro there. You've got a whole litany.
Sabian, I believe, as well.
You have a whole litany of people there now that are into gaming. So I think it's just going to be another marketing, and that's good because if you can get the gamers to come over to wrestling that aren't necessarily watching wrestling and you expand your audience even more, any extra audience is good audience.
Yeah, that Twitch audience it could bring in too. I would like to hope it's both either a gaming streaming service and I would like to hope that there is an actual AEW game to be announced.
See, I heard Twitch audience and I thought that Dave was joining us.
Now, the next match up on the card was Orange Cassidy versus John Silver, a match I had originally heard was going to be on the pre-show. I'm a little surprised it got bumped up to the show, even though I'm a fan of comedy matches. Before we get into even talking about the match, where do you fall on comedy wrestling? I can't imagine it's too favorable.
I don't mind comedy wrestling when done well. Comedy wrestling, when you play to the audience and you play an angle, actually is very much, to me, similar to the Southern style of wrestling, where you're playing off to the crowd. It's no different than the heel playing off to the crowd with a chin lock or using the old I've got something in my hand trick that Jerry Lawler would use when there's literally nothing in his hand. But, hey, you saw him go into his tights, so there's got to be brass knuckles there, right?
And not just on Halloween either.
Exactly. He's trying to trick or treat down there.
Now, what did you think of this match right here?
I thought the match went great. I think that I'm actually a fan of Orange Cassidy, and the reason why is because at the end of the day, he can wrestle his ass off. To be able to do nip-ups and stuff with your hands in your freaking pockets and still deliver stiff shots, I think that his ability is really good. And on the other side, the flip side, John Silver is an absolute little beast in there. He's the size of Hornswoggle, but with the steroid look of Hercules.
I was wondering where you were going to fall on John Silver, because I know you're not a fan of little guys, but for a shorter guy, he is built like a beast. And he did like the one-handed gorilla press in the match where he shows off some impressive feats of strength.
Well, as you know, I'm a fan of anybody who's a former guest on our show and a friend of our show.
100%. Also, Beyond Wrestling got the shout out on the air as the last place that the last match these two had.
Yeah, and they're giving AEW on their calls give shouts out to everyone. They tell where people are coming from, what their backgrounds are. If you want to see John Silver and you want to gain a respect for his work other than the comedy work, all you have to do is go to Beyond Wrestling or tune into the archives for the Working Fans podcast, and you'll get all the information that you need for John Silver to have respect for him.
I know, 100%. We talked to him just before he went to AEW, and like his goal of last year was just to get a contract with them. And here he was, second match on the main card, showing improvement. Like, he's been like a mid to lower level group guy. And just lately, he's kind of had that singles breakout that I think you and me have been waiting for, being fans of his from up here.
Well, I think the world can agree, other than Ricky Morton, we've made him more than anybody.
Oh, yeah, that young Ricky Morton, where would he be without us now? Now, my favorite spot in this was when Silver tore the pockets out of the pants. That was, one of the top 5 funnier things he did. And his comedy didn't stop there, like screaming, "Don't put your hands in the pants." Just everything he did was popping me during this match.
He does little things all the time. Anybody who's a fan of being the Elite knows that this guy is just killing it anywhere he goes right now. He's the second most popular cult member behind Anna Jay.
Now, it is wild that him on being the Elite has kind of given him this chance to blossom on TV, like obviously he deserves.
Yeah, hard to believe that being on a show with EVPs would actually help you to get over on the main roster.
Now, the next match up, Cody versus Darby Allin for the TNT Championship.
Oof.
This was the first title match of the evening, and before we get into the win, Cody was announced as Cody Rhodes, even though I believe he said he wasn't going to use it, but you get your name back. Why not use it?
It's a swerve.
And the Nightmare family, Jesus Christ, how many members do they have now? 10, 12? They're almost as big as the Dark Order.
Yeah, and the real good thing about him is they never actually seem to show up when he needs them.
Exactly. You got, the Gun Club there. You got QT Marshall. You got your brother Dustin. A couple ladies. Like, geez, man.
Now, what I've seen from Austin Gunn, is he actually the half-son of Billy? Because he only seems to have gotten half of his height.
I mean, he's got 100% of his expressiveness, but you're right. He's like, you would expect a bigger monster. Now, this match, good back and forth. I'm always down with the good Darby Allin match. I looked down for a moment during this match, and then when I looked up, Darby had won. It was that quick, and I didn't think Darby was going to win it. I was very surprised.
Yeah. Well, what I saw Cody Rhodes veer from Iron Anderson's game plan, and clearly that cost him.
Not the first time that something like that would happen tonight. Taz came out at the end with Ricky Starks and Brian Cage trying to pull off an old Dusty Angle, breaking Darby Allin's hand in his car door.
There was the moment with Taz's guys, too, when they had the TNT title where the two of them kind of stared at each other because each one was trying to pick up the belt.
Oh, yeah, that is going to be a match that's going to be interesting coming forward, and I like the nuance of that.
Yeah, well, Ricky Stark is talented as the day is long. I mean, the guy, we've seen him since he was NWA TV champion, blossom into what he is now. And with his personality and ability, the sky's the limit for that guy. And then, of course, the machine Brian Cage. I mean, what do we need to say about him? Mm-hmm. The guy is agile like a cruiserweight and freaking as strong as Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, and they had the chance to put over Will Hobbs here in the end because he chased off Taz's guys with a chair. And this is going to be a response to Taz's invitation, right? I mean, he didn't explicitly say no, but I mean, you're really picking a side by doing that.
Yeah, Will Hobbs seems to be definitely taking the side against them. But the one thing that I noticed that is, once again, no physical actual altercation between them. He never actually comes into contact with them, which sometimes is a classic sign of the swerve.
True, that could be coming at us. Now, the next match, the second title match of the night, Hikaru Shida versus Nyla Rose for the AEW Women's Championship and second Ladies Championship on the show. Where are you? Do you think that they're putting over the NWA title bigger than the AEW title?
Well, it's hard to say that they're putting it over bigger when this one's actually on the actual full gear.
This one had less of a story build-up, I'd say, than the NWA title match, which also had very little.
Which is true, but you also see such little build of who's actually wrestling for what title. These are the two bigger stars, in my opinion. I think Akira Shida, I think she is actually a bigger star than Serena Deeb, even though she did have time in WWE TV. And then Bull Nakano is definitely... Oh, sorry, that wasn't Bull Nakano. I think that she's definitely forced to be reckoned with, especially with that Vicky Guerrero with her.
Yeah.
Vicky Guerrero, quite frankly, might be the biggest name that's involved in the match.
Now, Nyla Rose, you probably wouldn't have picked up on this, but her gear was inspired by Mega Man. And there's also there was also a Skyrim reference thrown in.
No, I thought she did a great job as Method Man.
Now, Nyla Rose, I mean, they really beat the piss out of each other in this match. Yeah. They ran the dark results during this match, which I thought was an interesting selection for the pay-per-view. Once again, a good Dynamite thing, but for the pay-per-view, why are you pushing people to the YouTube show? Is it to get more eyes on it?
Well, plus, quite frankly, the guys that are turning in for the pay-per-view probably already know what happened on Dark.
Yeah.
If you're paying $50 to watch the pay-per-view, you're a pretty hardcore fan. You know what's going on in Dark. You know what's going on in Dynamite. You probably know what's going on in Being the Elite.
Yeah, they did run an extra episode of Dark this week on Friday, which surprised me.
Yeah, I'm not really surprised because I think they were trying to make a weekend of it so that, you tune in for show on Friday, you tune in for the pre-show on Saturday. Now you have somewhat of an event instead of just a pay-per-view, and people feel like they're getting a little bit more for their money.
True. I was surprised to see Matt Sydal beat Chris Daniels, which was in a match I actually watched on Dark. Standout match. Those two have known each other since, I want to say, the ROH days, and they put on a hell of a match.
Yeah, and I would expect nothing less from him. Christopher Daniels, obviously over 50 years old now, is at the point in his career where he's putting people over more often than not. He's not even really being seen with the rest of SoCal anymore. They've done a pretty good job of distancing those guys from each other. Scorpio Sky, they've gone even so far as to give COVID so that he won't be anywhere near the other two. It's definitely not the prime anymore for Christopher Daniels, but he is a good character.
Yes, 100%. Now, Hikaru Shida won this match. I thought it was good to keep the title on her. I think if you're going to put the title on another woman, do you wait for Abaddon to come back, who I heard was slotted in this spot and has been getting quite a bit of popularity? Or do you just keep building her up to see who the next big character is that's going to pop?
Eventually, that belt's going to go to Britt Baker.
Yeah, that's true.
Eventually, Britt Baker, who is one of your top heels in the organization, people hate Britt Baker. And people hated Britt Baker when she was a face. She's one of those people that has natural heat. And I know people are going to say, yeah, but it's like X-Pac heat. Motherfuckers, heat is heat. If people genuinely hate you, then you got something going there. And she has that. She comes down as being condescending and knowing more than other people. And people don't like smart people.
No, what if she goes for the NWA title instead of the AEW title and tries putting that over? That could get some heat.
If you put her on the NWA title, now you're putting more emphasis on the NWA title because that is your biggest star in your women's division. As much as I like the work style, and I think that Shida is a much better worker than Britt Baker, Britt Baker's a megastar.
Gotcha. Now, the next title match of the night is a long-time dream match. All right, the next match was the third title match of the night. FTR versus the Young Bucks. A dream match, a match in the making. Did you feel it lived up to your expectations of what you thought this match would be?
Oh, yeah, they did a good job with it. It showed some of the athleticism of FTR, and it showed some of the storytelling ability of the Young Bucks. I think that a lot of times, and I'm not the Bucks' biggest fan, I think that a lot of times they use moves that are unnecessary in matches and get away from storytelling, just like a lot of people out there do. But I thought in this match, they did a fantastic job of telling the story all the way through to the end and showing what that belt's actually meant to them. And a great moment at the end with Kenny Omega coming out, because at that moment you set up what could be a future heel faction.
Yeah, and you saw Hangman Page hanging out in the tunnel, didn't even come all the way out.
Well, Tony Schiavone pointed out, he said, wasn't there somebody lurking over there in the tunnel?
Yeah. But
so it was a subtle point out, but it wasn't, hey, what the hell's Hangman Page doing over there?
Exactly. FTR lost with a rare flip, which when I saw him do the flip, I knew the match was over, and then I'm like, why would you do that? I didn't see them losing. I mean, I don't know what else the Bucks would have done, but it took me by surprise, and I want to see Dynamite to see where this is going, because it can't be the end of the road.
The problem is there's no way the Bucks could have lost that match because they put their backs up against the corner with, they'll never get another shot similar to like Cody in the world title.
What if that spawned a 6-man title?
Oh, God, that's what we need, more belts.
See, exactly. I mean, we don't need it, but I'm like, if they lose, maybe they spawn a 6-man title, not something the WWF has, and more akin to what they're a fan of in Japan. I'm glad they didn't create another title, by the way, but it was one way we saw it going that night.
I only want 6-man belts if we can see the Freebird rule enforced.
The Young Bucks book coming out November 17th. Will you be buying it?
Oh, absolutely. I can't wait. I have this whole stack of papers on my desk that keep flying away. And once I get that book, those papers will never move again.
Now, I think it's going to be an interesting look at the indies. There was a book by Keith Elliott Greenberg released recently that I think is a more interesting dig into the indies. But either way, you got two books that'll give you the modern indie scene. Now, I've never read the Bucks book. Tony Schiavone said he read it in 2.5 days, so I don't know if that puts it over or kind of buries it.
I think that the big thing about the Bucks in the indie book is the title. They should have, instead of calling it the Young Bucks, whatever they called it, they should have called it Indie AF.
Shout out to Over AF and Alex Thorne, our guest on last week's show. Really motivational guy. Like, just listening to him makes me want to push farther with what we do, because I feel like we're sleeping too many hours in the night and we could be putting ourselves over harder.
Yeah, Alex Thorne is an absolute genius. I think you can hear by my dogs that I don't actually get to sleep much at night. But Alex Thorne is an absolute genius when it comes to marketing and when it comes to pushing himself further than you would think one can.
Yeah, and if you want to hear something good, listen to the Over AF podcast. If we're going to put over something that's our favorite this week, let's put over AF podcast. You could search them anywhere you can get podcasts. Him and Dangerous Danny, they put out a product that you put me onto a couple weeks before we had him on, and I haven't been able to stop listening. It's just...
it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a really good listen. And now let's speak of a really good watch. I don't know if you fell on the same side of decision as I did, but Sammy Guevara versus Matt Hardy, the Elite Deletion match. First off, what were your thoughts?
I normally do not like stuff like this. I'm not a big theatrical guy. I don't think that it's necessarily great to get away from the wrestling, but I thought they did a good job of actually still wrestling, even though they were on the compound.
Oh yeah, there was a ton of actual wrestling in addition to all the gimmicks. I mean, they had the high-risk moves, they had the comedy, they had the legend spots.
The funny thing is that those high-risk moves, as painful as they might look, I would take any of those over that suplex in the front yard.
Oh.
I don't know if you've ever taken a suplex before.
No.
But taking a snap suplex onto hard dirt cannot feel good. When you take a suplex in the ring, there's at least a little bit of give. There is no give on the front yard.
No. Now, they had a couple special appearances during this. Gangrel and Shane Helms. What was your level of excitement for the two appearances?
Well, first of all, I love the fact that when it came to Gangrel, who does have his own name actually marketed, so you can use his name, that Jim Ross and the other announcers couldn't actually decide whether or not to call him David Heath or Gangrel. It was almost like they were arguing back and forth what to actually call him.
And that's one of the few instances, because usually in the wrestling business, we've heard, like, if you've got a wrestling name, that's what you're referred to as.
Yeah, he's one of the few people. He actually has the rights to his name, uses it on the independent circuit. He was smart enough to get that trademark long before the WWE ever was able to. But to see him, and I'm always a Shane Helms fan. You talk about somebody who did what we're doing now long before we did. Shane Helms was on the forefront of doing a podcast, and he was on the forefront of marketing himself. And talk about character development, going back and forth between the reporter and the Hurricane was absolutely comedy genius.
100%. From what I heard on this week's Talkin' Shop, he is also on Talkin' Shop-A-Mania 2. That's going to be Friday, November 13th, 10 p.m. on Fight TV. Worth checking out, and it's good to see Shane popping up on more things.
You know what? Since they're doing that, since they're going to do the Talking Shop-A-Mania, what we should do is we should get booked Rory Fox and get him on our show to talk about Talking Shop-A-Mania.
We might be able to make that happen tomorrow night. Check in Wednesday night, 6 p.m. All Everything Entertainment and on our YouTube. We'll be on both.
I can tell you something about Rory Fox. That guy holds nothing back.
No, his first appearance on our show was excellent, and I'm excited to hear how his career is coming forward, because he's a true working fan. He has a day job, and he is still pulling out indie dates and being able to do things like this. And it's a real testament to his spirit. And you can hear the excitement in his voice. He talked about last time being on the job and just daydreaming about thoughts and promos and things running through his head.
Well, I heard that he's looking to make big money, so he's thinking about buying a bread route.
I know Dave is out there slinging that dough and making that dough, apparently, because
Hey, people are buying that maple bread.
nobody's buying the fucking maple bread. I always tease him about the swirls, but he says they go over huge.
By the way, guys, in case you're wondering what kind of bread that Dave actually sells, he sells Martin's potato bread.
Oh yeah, get it up in the the Danielson, Mansfield, Willimantic area. If you can get Martin's bread, you're helping Dave out.
Absolutely. Make that purchase. If you're not in that area, well, screw Martin's bread then.
Yeah, drive up there. It's only 10 miles, 20 miles from where we're at. Get some.
Hell, if you're in the Boston area, it's only about 2 hours. Don't be afraid to stop on in. And
Oh yeah, let's flood his route. If we can make Dave enough money, he can get up out that bread route. Now, next up on the list, we got MJF versus Chris Jericho for the right to join the Inner Circle. Going into this, my prediction was MJF wins and refuses to go in.
this was my second favorite match of the night.
Ooh, I'm excited to see what the first was when we talk about all of them. But what did you think about your level of excitement was pretty high going into this?
It was. I mean, you've got Chris Jericho, who has evolved, and as well as anybody in wrestling. We talked earlier about Christopher Daniels being over 50. Jericho's over 50 also. And he's actually doing a great job of evolving his style so that he continues to be crisp out there. And it's something that a lot of people struggle with, trying to make themselves still relevant. That Judas Effect elbow is a move that's going to put very little damage to his body. And he showed in the match with MJF that if he has to, he's just smart in how he sprinkles them in there.
100%. Now, I was looking out into the crowd during this, and during the time when everybody's rocking out to Judas, I thought I saw a dude from Reno Scum in the crowd. It turns out it's Ryzen, apparently. I thought we were having full impact crossover there.
Is there a song that's more over right now?
No, if the crowd was bigger, I think it would go over better. It seems a tiny bit forced with a smaller crowd, but the shots that they show of people, they're really rocking out to it, so you can't deny it.
I mean, I wish somebody would turn down Jim Ross's mic. It's a little uncomfortable listening to him sing it. But the rest of it's absolutely incredible. By the way, I don't know if anybody's out there has ever listened to Fozzy. They're actually not a bad band at all. They actually have a really good sound to them. If you like bands like Atreyu, then you will enjoy Fozzy because, quite frankly, it's along that same lines of music.
Yeah, they're made up of the former Stuck Mojo, who I was also always a fan of. Rich Ward, an amazing guitarist, and him and Chris Jericho have put together something really good there. Now, MJF, were you surprised to see him win this match?
I was not. I didn't see where else this angle possibly could go, quite frankly. Now, here's the thing. Jericho's been getting over so much as a face. Is it possible at some point that the Inner Circle actually turns on Jericho and goes with MJF as the leader, and now you have one hell of a babyface in Chris Jericho?
100%. Dave said that exact same thing, because I suggested MJF wins the match, refuses to join the Inner Circle, kicks off the new Four Horsemen, because he was referring to how much his suit cost earlier. He was doing a couple other very Ric Flair type things, and then they get him in, and Dave suggests, well, what if he takes over the Inner Circle, Jericho goes face, and that made 100% sense.
Well, think about it. The person who was most vocal about MJF not being in was Sammy Guevara. Sammy Guevara obviously was deleted, so he's going to be injured.
So his vote is vetoed in this point.
Exactly. So he might not even be relevant to the discussion when they actually do it this week. Like I said, you have an instant huge face in Chris Jericho if they do the switch over. The big one and the hard one to swerve is going to actually be Jack Swagger, because that guy's in Jericho's corner for every match, and it doesn't necessarily make sense to have him and Wardlow unless they're teaming on the same side.
Ooh, and they're putting very interesting story points going forward. So either way, this was obviously the way to go. Wardlow is welcomed into the Inner Circle, and that's going to be interesting to see where they go with that Wednesday.
I thought the end was a good tribute to Eddie Guerrero, too. I really enjoyed the end of the match.
Oh, 100%. Now, we're going to move on to the last match of the night. Moxley versus Kingston, AEW title match. Where was your excitement for this going in versus where were you afterwards?
I thought it would be a good match. I did not think it was going to reach the level in which it did. It definitely reached CZW style of violence.
Yeah, they had the barbed wire bat, the barbed wire on its own, barbed wire in the mouth, thumbtacks.
I would like to point out also how over our podcast is getting, because clearly Eddie Kingston listened to our podcast when I talked about his ring gear and needing to look more like a professional wrestler, since he did show up looking very much like he was the newest member of the SmackDown Tag Team Champions.
I thought you were going to say the Spirit Squad because he came out with that Masawa gear, and
Yeah.
I was a fan of it, but me and Dave were commenting. We're like, I got to know what AJ has to say about this. Now, this match was wild. I thought it was a good main event to the night. Maybe some of the matches before we had slightly more excitement for. I think if you ended the night on that tag team championship match, that might have been my main event of the night because you could have built anticipation all night for it.
I love the tag team wrestling, and obviously it was a bigger marketed match, but the story that they told in this main event of Eddie Kingston clawing and toothing his way for his whole career to try to get to this moment, to this world title shot, and the relationship between him and Moxley, and the fact that they were brethren, and Moxley went to be a sports entertainer, and then once again, Moxley showing, hey, I'm not a sports entertainer. There's a reason why I told the WWE to screw off. Wrapping the barbed wire around his arm to deliver that cowboy choke. Absolutely fantastic storyline throughout. Eddie Kingston wrapping the barbed wire around his fist not once but a few times to deliver those punches and rain him down. The brutality in this match was just phenomenal. But the story was what was actually the best part of this match.
Yeah, the promos going in, I wanted Kingston to win so bad, but they had me wanting him to win so bad that I knew that he had to lose. And
the other problem is if Eddie Kingston wins, who's his next challenger?
he doesn't care. That promo in the buy-in was quite intense and just another reason why he's a master storyteller. I almost thought if he lost, you'd have more of a story with him just talking about it week after week.
Yeah, and that's exactly why the loss is so important there. If you put him over in this situation, unfortunately, the Kenny Omega match makes no sense whatsoever.
True.
And then but by having him lose and having him fight the fight that he fought in that match, you've now made Eddie Kingston. Eddie Kingston made Eddie Kingston. AEW made Eddie Kingston. You have a made man. This guy is going to be able to wrestle anybody now and be legit as can be. And now, going forward, you have Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley, which they've been building since the beginning of Jon Moxley's time in there. And this time it's going to be a legitimate wrestling match, which is a whole nother story.
True. Now, I would say, we've reviewed the whole show. Would you say this was better than their last pay-per-view, which was All Out?
There is one thing I want to talk about. I'm sorry, from this
what else?
pay-per-view. We had the interview with Jake Roberts and freaking Lance Archer.
Oh, true, where Jake sounds like shit.
He does sound like shit. He sounds like somebody who, and I don't know why he would sound this way. He sounds like somebody who's done drugs and alcohol his whole life and barely has a breath left in his body. But Lance Archer, on the other hand, you talk about somebody who is the future of AEW. this guy really is the murder hawk. He has that capability of being a challenger for any title at any given time, and he's a destroyer. So they need to do what they're doing, which is protect him, not necessarily put him on every show, and just have him that beast in the background who's tearing people apart.
And they do have him speaking more, which is helping him out. I think keeping him with Jake it's a good enough idea. It's getting Jake on TV. I think Jake was a lot more effective when they started bringing him out. Then they've seen diminished returns since then, so...
The problem is that, like we said, Jake is not coming across as the Jake of old. He doesn't have the same cadence anymore. I mean, some of it's still good, but nobody's sitting there going, oh God, I hope Jake Roberts doesn't attack.
He's not speaking too loud, though, so he hasn't increased his volume.
Yeah, when I have to turn up my hearing aid to be able to hear him, it's not.
Now, where were you on Sting appearing? Because there was news a couple days before this event that Sting's WWE contract had run out, and a lot of people were speculating that he was going to be on this show.
Do we need Sting?
We don't need him, but the way they've been portraying Darby Allin recently sitting up in the rafters, to me it almost seemed like that kind of clue that maybe a preview for the future.
And it could be a passing of the torch thing, could be a serious thing and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we shouldn't have Sting. My problem is we're talking about a guy who the last time we saw him almost got crippled in the ring.
True, and he wouldn't have to do as much. He wouldn't have to wrestle probably in AEW. He could be that figure with Darby Allin, not even have to talk. We were just hoping for that Tony Schiavone, it's Sting call.
Yeah. Woo.
We kept seeing it around every corner, and then when he didn't show up, we just felt like assholes.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not expecting too much from that. I love Sting. I was a WCW guy. I grew up on Surfer Sting and going into the Crow Sting. And I'll always have a soft spot for Sting, which I think is one of the reasons why I don't want to see him too much, is I don't want to tarnish my memories of Sting.
Yeah, and you don't really need him. People feel different ways about his TNA run. Not something I even took in, so that's a whole period of Sting that I just haven't watched. I'm fine with my WCW memories of Sting up until late 90s, when the NWO started becoming a thing and he joined them. I was like, I'm alright with Sting right now.
I mean, some of Sting's best work, don't get me wrong, was in TNA. He did a great job of getting over talent in TNA and did a great job of character development. I love the Joker version of Sting.
He carried Jeff Hardy through a match.
Yeah, literally carried him. But who hasn't done that, right? But I thought Joker Sting was a great character development, and I enjoyed that also. But it's been a long time since he's been athletic Sting.
True. Now, we've talked about the last pay-per-view. Let's talk about the next pay-per-view. Revolution's coming up late in February. Where's your excitement for this right now? There's not too much known on the card. I mean, I think we can assume the world title match.
I was going to say, do I need to know something other than Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley?
What if they did that on the Wrestle Kingdom card?
I mean, they could, but why would you give away that big of a match on someone else's card?
That's what Dave and Scott from Voluntown were talking about. Because I suggested that. I'm like, well, Moxley's already got to lose that U.S. title. What if they went over January 4th, Moxley does a U.S. title match. Maybe January 5th they do the first match, Moxley retains, and then they do the rematch at Revolutions.
Well, what if instead of actually wrestling for the AEW title, they go over to Wrestle Kingdom, and Moxley actually loses the title, the other title, the U.S. title to Omega on that card?
Ooh, I didn't think about that. And that way you are flip-flopping a title, getting everybody involved in Japan again.
Exactly. Now you're flip-flopping a title over there, and now you set it up that, Omega took his other title while they were in Japan. Is he going to take away his AEW world title now back in the States?
True. And I think coming up on Dynamite tomorrow night, we're going to have to see where the ladies' title is going, where the tag team title is going into Revolutions. It's still early in the cycle. They're just getting through this pay-per-view. But I'm interested to see how the card develops going forward.
Well, I think I'm like everybody else. I just pray to God that the next challenger is Brandy Rhodes.
I think we're all hoping for a shot of Brandy. But, folks, we're going to be bringing you some varied content. The soundboard's going to be down for a month, so we're going to have to get interesting with producing. But we're happy to bring you a bonus episode this week, and we will see you tomorrow night on the live video, and we'll see you Thursday on another episode of the Working Fans Podcast.
And as usual, for getting to look at this, you're welcome.
All right, so that wraps us up for this week. Thank you again for listening to the Working Fans Podcast. So as always, you can find us on Twitter at FansWorking. Our Facebook page is Working Fans Wrestling Pod. We have email where you can reach out to us and let us know what you think also. That's workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram, workingfanswrestling_pod. And then as always, please continue to listen to us on Anchor.fm, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, all your major platforms. If you're following us on Apple Podcasts, which we are also on now, and YouTube, please make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. It helps us bring you these podcasts where we get to talk to you and talk with you every week.